Alright, time for some more Illogic. Last time we went over our conference semifinals match against Matt and his Cincinnati Incineroar. Please go check out the video first if you have not done so already. Seriously, go check that one out. Because we went over the Teambuilder and battle in which, spoiler alert if needed, the Bouffalant clutched out the 1-0 victory off the back of Scarf Gholdengo, First Impression Slitherwing, and an early layer of T-Spikes. That victory will move us into the conference finals and a rematch against the familiar face of Michael and his Route 1 Birbs. Timestamps will be in the description. Though we did defeat Michael in Week 3 to bring us to 2-1 and push him down to 0-2, since then, Michael went on a 5-win streak, and after a minor setback in Week 9, rematched that same team and beat them in the play-in round. Then, last round, he provided credence to the theory that he simply will not lose to Chad, or in the playoffs, ever again, by smoking the Steamrollers one more time. That means to declare ourselves the champions of the Johto Conference and go to the finals, we're going to have to contend with the Birbs yet again. They have made a transaction since we last faced, too. Serena is out in favor of Eelektross, as Serena was not providing anything valuable for the Birbs, and Eelektross' coverage is very impressive while making the ground resist into an immunity. Aside from that, the conversation about this team needs to start with the top 5 Mons that are seemingly brought every single week, and are as same as last time, the 5 best in this matchup as well. Chien-Pao, Iron Moth, Salamence, Ting-Lu, and Slowbro. This is the core that has brought Michael all of his success, with minimal contributions from various others depending on the matchup, mainly the Hawlucha and the Magnezone there. My solution to these last time was to sweep through with the Azumarill, but a more nuanced take will show a few flaws Michael can correct upon from last time. Chien-Pao was victimized by Choice Scarf Slithering, and really an outstanding bring on my part in that matchup. But he also didn't have a dedicated Slithering check. Salamence was a sweeper, Iron Moth was pivoted out on, and Florges, which he kept bringing in on it, was honestly pretty worthless for him and will not be coming again, especially considering how Gholdengo could take advantage of that all day. As such, it was relegated to try and clean up at the end using Protect for First Impression and Sucker Punch for priority. I'm definitely more scared of a Choice Band or Sword Stance set going off this time, considering how close I actually may have been to losing had that last Sucker Punch KO'd Azu. Iron Moth was his most successful team member, grabbing his only KO and bunches of damage anytime it came in, especially on that Gholdengo, but he mixed up the booster energy boost and got his Terra caught out thanks to a risky double from me. Without that mistake, it'll be much tougher to contend with, especially considering I didn't even have a switch into it last match. As mentioned before, the Salamence was a D-Dance set, but never got the opportunity to set up and just got some chip onto Azu before going down. I'm definitely fearing a more defensive helmet or a boot set to switch in on the Slitherwing every single time, or a special attacking set potentially firing off Draco, Hurricane, and Flamethrower with maybe Specs or just boots and Roost. Ting-Lu got hampered immediately by the Choice Scarf, maybe the most critical part of our success the first time around, and I don't think Michael will let that happen so easily again this time. Additionally, he prioritized hazards relatively heavily last time, only for Talonflame to defog them all away with relative ease, costing him precious turns that I used to have Garchomp chip away at this guy. With smarter play, Ting-Lu can still be a huge thorn in my side, including Hazard Still, or even an Assault Vest set to better tank everything that might be coming its way. Rock Slide for Talonflame, Ruination to bring literally anything to half. This should probably be the biggest glow up compared to last time. I will need to be ready. And finally, Slowbro, who sat in front of my team most of the match, had very few switch-ins and went down at the end to a +6 play rough. However, Michael didn't even utilize his item and tech move choice, the Terrain Extender with Psychic Terrain. I found Future Sight tough to play around already. Imagine if he'd had a more useful item like Lefties or Helmet or Assault Vest like I originally feared. It could be that much tougher to try and break through, especially because I suspect he won't be giving Azumarill the same freedom to belly drum up this time around. So what about his final Mon? I think we've seen the last of Florges, whose passive play and one missed wish opportunity cost Michael dearly the first time. Gardevoir and Lucario are similar, but pretty unlikely overall considering how fragile and one-note they are. I think they'd be forced to make some very impressive reads to be considered threats, though if Michael wants Salamence to go more defensive, it may make sense to give these two a look as a replacement offensive complement. Hawlucha is obviously interesting as the only remaining hazard remover that can remove against Gholdengo even, but that's about all it does to the Cheese String Lad unless running something off the wall like Fling. Think I won't see that coming? But maybe this is the defensive Slithering answer itself, with a similar set to my Talonflame. I could see that coming in that capacity at least, but really I think it's one of the electric types who can provide a more immediate answer for Azu's belly drumming shenanigans if needed, while providing a solid defensive profile against things like Gholdengo or Talonflame. Magnezone is more powerful of course. I saw it do over half to Sandy Shock's a resist, but Electros has the coverage. Magnezone has a few more resists, but Electros' ground immunity is quite valuable to save Salamence for Slitherwing instead of getting bopped by a Garchomp Dragon move. Each has their merit. I think he gives the Eel a try so he can pivot around and break a hole in my team with coverage options like U-Turn for Wo-Chien, Flamethrower for Goldengo, Discharge for Azu and Paris, maybe Giga Drain for Gastrodon, or Stomping Tantrum for Toxtricity, or Acrobatics for Slitherwing. There are a lot of good options for him. I wonder what we'll end up seeing. So that's a very threatening lineup we're facing off against. However, unlike last game against Matt, I really like my overall matchup here, and I considered literally every single mon that we have access to at various points. Everything had at least one set constructed for it, at least one valuable use within the composition. It took multiple days to make the first cut even, but Avalugg, as usual, will not be participating here. I loved the look of a fully physically defensive set, maybe with a Rocky Helmet, to swap into Chien-Pao every single time and threaten the KO back with Body Press or Heavy Slam. Ice Spinner could hit Ting-Lu and Salamence too, and with Recover and Rapid Spin, I could keep myself and the team healthy. Then again, I am fully taken advantage of by Slowbro, who shrugs off all of my moves unless I invested Iron Defense for Body Press, and even then, he'll be outpacing my damage, and Chien-Pao's fighting coverage would hit through that boost too anyways. Not to mention that Iron Moth would also be lurking while resisting all of my now non-ground coverage and hitting with Fire Stab on the special side. If I'm caught on the wrong side of his Terra or there's a switch when I can't heal up, we are in trouble. If I end up sacking my Chien-Pao answer to answer Iron Moth, then isn't Chien-Pao just going to sweep? It's a precarious game that I'm not playing this time, no Avalugg, though kudos for a pretty decent role in the matchup nonetheless. Next up is Arcanine again. I'm sort of surprised by how infrequently I've been bringing Arcanine this go-around. Power creep? High tier season? Lack of teleport and toxic? Whatever the case, Arcanine cannot deal with Slowbro. Even Power Herb Solar Beam does just over half, so of course next turn it'll swap out or slack off to heal health. I did actually have a neat little sun idea working for a bit. Talonflame Sunny Day out into this for Solar Beam or Morning Sun, and his Slitherwing for a Photosynthesis boost, even Wo-Chien for a growth? But in the semifinals, I'm not risking that. Maybe if we'd had the luxury of a meme match. Anyways, Arcanine is hard-walled by Slowbro unless I'm doing something crazy like Choice Band, Wild Charge, or Crunch, in which case Ting-Lu walls me, but I could use Close Combat or Play Rough, but then Slowbro walls me. Play Rough is all I have for Salamence too, and as nice as Extreme Speed would be for Iron Moth, it's just too big of a problem. I'm a decent wall to it, but Sludge Wave hits a little too hard. My response would be, unironically, Bulldoze. Yep, I'm not doing that. Mind you, with both Arcanine and Avalugg out, we've already started to run low on Chien-Pao answer, so many of the remaining cuts are based off of that matchup and what the 6 mons I am bringing are trying to accomplish within the context of your game plan. That said, while Gastrodon is one of the few mons that might be able to wall Chien-Pao decently well thanks to natural bulk, it's facing the same problem I've had for most of its tenure this season. What exactly do I do back? Actually, I have a few much better matchups here. I can hit these elements rather with Ice Beam. I can hit Iron Moth with Earthquake, is a little stronger than Earth Power, of course. Ting-Lu with the Stab Surf. Or I can sit in front of a couple mons like Ting-Lu or Slowbro to get up hazards in return. And, well, at the same time, they're going to set up hazards on me too, and without Avalugg, I'd have to try to defog them away, and his mons are much more powerful off the rip than mine, meaning I think he'd benefit more from hazards rather than me. Ting-Lu isn't taking much from my attacks anyways, and Slowbro will do as it pleases. Even Iron Moth is going to have Energy Ball, but I could at least make it off of switching into Salamence, right? The main issue is the ability for Chien-Pao to swap in freely. If I had any fighting coverage at all, we'd be in business, but as it is, Gastrodon has exactly one option if I want to threaten the Snow Leopard in the form of Stone Edge, or I guess I could try to commit the Terror to fighting, but I'm not doing that. This may not be all too bad, but the accuracy and inability to 2-hit KO a max HP Chien-Pao from Stone Edge are both very concerning. Ultimately, I don't have the move slots for everything. Stone Edge doesn't do enough to Salamence, especially with Roost, so Stone Edge, Ice Beam, Earthquake, Recover, where are the hazards? No water move for Ting-Lu? Don't think I can afford to bring Rindo either for Iron Moth. Lefties are probably required. No momentum move, no Oko on Chien-Pao with Ruination. Ting-Lu easily able to get up its hazards and beat me one-on-one. It would give Slowbro room to breathe. I cannot do that. It got so tough, though, cutting anything else from here, but I ended up picking a couple mons that I had brought last time. Talonflame came to 6 of our 7 normal matches in the regular season, but is 0 for 2 here in the playoffs. Not enough pressure for me. I love the idea of clearing Ting-Lu hazards and you turning out of the obvious checks like Slowbro, but one wrong prediction hangs me out to dry. If Iron Moth doesn't Terra Grass again, I may even fail to 2-hit KO with Brave Bird. Imagine if I willowed into that. Also, I'm naturally outsped by Chien-Pao, just a bit of chip and I've got to be concerned. Salamence I'm anticipating to be a special attacker, and what exactly are my switch-ins to that? And what if I can never burn when I need to because he goes Slowbro every time? My game plan doesn't allow for loose ends like these, and if I'm anticipating what I am, including the very real possibility that Ting-Lu is not a hazard setter this week with something like Choice Band or an Assault Vest, there just isn't enough upside to consider Talonflame any further. Finally, and it pains me to do this after how well it did both last week and the first time I squared off with the Birbs, but Slitherwing will not be coming along. The Choice Scarf U-turns were amazing the first time we played, amplified by the Terra Grass on Iron Moth, forcing Florges to be the quote-unquote answer to it. But I don't think he's going to let me get away with that again. I'm anticipating a bulkier Salamence, probably Boots or Helmet. That would make it a consistent answer to Slitherwing, barring a weird Terra like Rock or Ice. Slowbro should be fully physically defensive again, and could be rocking a Helmet this time to punish U-turn and take less than half, which means U-turn could even be slacked off unless I invest heavily in attack, which then kind of defeats the purpose of being able to outspeed the Chien-Pao. The last one could certainly be Eel, who can slow U-turn out, or Hawlucha, who just eats me alive. Finally, I do foresee a Scarf of his own this match from one of the 3 faster guarantees, Chien-Pao, Iron Moth, or Salamence, with the last of those being least likely, but still I think quite possible. I wouldn't be terribly surprised to see Scarf Moth in particular as a way to outspeed and punish Slitherwing no matter what, which seems terrifying. That, plus the plans I have for my other 6 Mons, and anticipating what Michael will be anticipating me to have based on the first time around, will leave my bug friend on the bench this week. I ended up feeling pretty decent about the 6 I ended up picking out. A couple of them should be able to dominate from here, and a couple of them should be able to punch a hole. As always, let's start with Goldango, who I didn't feel tremendous about this week, but it's too good of a mon to let go, you know? That, and I think I found a relatively spammable move. I loved the trick we used last time to neuter Ting-Lu with the Scarf, but there's no shot he falls for that again. Instead, the goal is just sit here and click buttons till we go down. The best answer he has is, obviously, Ting-Lu, but there will be some hesitation until he knows what's up. As such, nasty plotting in front of a Slowbro seems pretty free, otherwise coming in for revenge is pretty fun too. We have the Akaberry if Slowbro tries to flamethrower me, or if he swaps into the Iron Moth, which he did multiple times last match. Once I have Nasty Plot up, I'm hoping I can take a KO between dual stabs and maybe my most spammable move in the matchup in Dazzling Gleam. It hits Chien-Pao, Salamence, and importantly Ting-Lu super effectively, giving me a potential 2-hit KO on Ting-Lu too, unless he's lefties again or AV. It would kinda suck if he's banded, but otherwise I'll be glad to take any of these trades. Terra Fairy facilitates the spamming of Dazzling Gleam, as well as, of course, getting out of all these bad weaknesses like Ground Fire and, of course, giving the resist to Chien-Pao's Crunch. I'd love to trade this for Chien-Pao, or this for Ting-Lu, or this for half of both Ting-Lu and Iron Moth, or something like that, so here's hoping this one works out. However, I think I have a slightly better Terra candidate this time, as I am running Terra Blast on him on again. It's probably not what you think, not the type that you think, but it's the mon I'm most excited for this week. We've got the 4-attack Wo-Chien with Terra Blast and Terra Rock. This probably looks weird, and I don't think I can blame you for that, but hear me out. I was already looking at Body Press as an option to OHKO Chien-Pao, which isn't affected by Sword of Ruin, apparently. Let me know down below if you had any idea that Chien-Pao's defense-lowering ability wouldn't affect Body Press. Where was I? Oh, yeah, so something like knockoff Leech Seed Body Press, you know, but then how am I hitting anything, like, at all? Leech Seed is nice and all, but I started really loving Ruination here. That's a move I can spam in this matchup. Half the HP off of any mon in this matchup, that's something I can love. And then I started going a little crazy. What if I leaned into the special attacking side? Did you know modest 252 special attack Wo-Chien after a growth can OHKO Slowbro with Dark Pulse? And there are some great Terra Blast options too. And instead of going crazy defensive or going crazy offensive, I settled on this in-between option. Fully invested in HP and defense with leftovers to help out. The defensive investment is significant in that I do still live an Adamant Ice Spinner from banded Chien-Pao even before Terra, which means afterwards it would take a banded Sacred Sword to 2-hit KO me with the Terra, which is kinda insane in the membrane. The move set, however, is a mishmash of offensive ideas to allow me to output more pressure than I take on. Ruination, as said before, is the spammable move in the matchup. Imagine just taking half from that Iron Moth, or the Eelektross, or one of his defensive answers, which normally he wouldn't switch in, but maybe trying to take advantage of a pivot. And from there, we have a plethora of options to choose from. For Slowbro, Dark Pulse should finish it off, doing a little bit more than half to max HP Fizzdef Slowbro, and if it's AV, he can't slack off to heal up. for Ting-Lu and Chien-Pao, it's Body Press. As stated before, Body Press OHKOs Chien-Pao already, and against Ting-Lu it'll be a 4-hit KO, meaning after Ruination, 2 more will finish the job, while in return Body Press is back without defense investment? Ruinations? That's about it. I'll take that trade all day. And of course, for Salamence and Iron Moth, the Piece de Resistance, Terra Blast, with the Rock typing. I hear you, Fairy and Ghost Terra types in Wo-Chien were neat, but Rock? Think about it, with this Terra, I'm no longer weak to Ice Spinner, I'm no longer weak to Dual Wing Beat, I'm no longer weak to Flamethrower or Sludge Wave from Iron Moth, and in fact resist all of those. Well, those last 2 at least, and the Dual Wing Beat. What I'm saying is, Ruination into Iron Moth switch in, then Terra Rock, Terra Blast will pick up the last 50% unless there is some sort of investment for some reason. Ruination into Salamence, and unless he is roosting, which he could be, Terra Rock, Terra Blast will pick up the last 50%. All the while, I will be resisting the incoming moves. This Wo-Chien could seriously trade for like 3 Mons this matchup, and I would not be at all surprised. This set is actually kind of monstrous. If I can say pick off a weakened Ting-Lu, then go straight into KOing something else with a nice Ruination combo, Wo-Chien will be out trading easily, which is admittedly very funny. Weird to rely on Wo-Chien, especially when I lamented its poor matchup the first time we faced off, but maybe I've grown a new appreciation for it. Similarly, may as well move on to the other Mon, which did not come last time, but has garnered favor over the course of the season. Toxtricity is back. Choice Specs is my choice this week, because I absolutely adore the Boom Burst calcs I see before my eyes. Max Speed of Ting-Lu is 3 KO'd by this non-stab move. That's wild. If I Terra Normal, it's a 2-hit KO. What else could possibly say that? Slowbro is a 50-50 to go down in 1 shot, meaning after the slightest bit of chip, I'm threatening it with a non-electric move. So the game plan is simple. If this comes in on Slowbro, especially if Ting-Lu is down and or low, pick a sack. I could potentially click other moves, maybe. Overdrive if Ting-Lu is down, still gets OHKOs. Volt Switch if I want to make sure I'm not stuck in with a slower Mon like this after taking a Mon out. And Sludge Bomb if there's a Terra Fairy, maybe? Yeah, but Boom Burst is a winning strategy against a team whose normal resists Total Magnezone, which he's not shied away from bashing a bit, and Lucario, which, yeah. Spamble move, hope it works, but it may be showing my hand a bit as to what the strat is. That's 3 Mons in a row who I want to come in on Slowbro. I did, at least in part, disqualify everything that failed to make the team due to their poor Slowbro matchups. My final 3 team members struggle with it a bit too, honestly. Here's hoping loading up on a few ways to take advantage of Slowbro can help me out on the frequent switches in against my last 3 Mons. The only one of those remaining that doesn't have a true way around Slowbro, especially if it's carrying Ice Beam, will be Garchomp, who's carrying a different choice item this time. It didn't get to do anything the first time I brought it, but I have a good feeling about Scarfed Outrage this time, complete with an Adamant Nature to ensure I can still 3-hit KO Slowbro in a pinch. You see, there's no way around that Chien-Pao matchup, is there? Ice Spinner cleanly OHKOs, and Ice Shard, if banded, can even OHKO through Yache Berry. Yikes! However, I'm not convinced he's going to be bringing Ice Shard. I think either he goes with a Scarf set of his own, or he's going to be running other moves. Ice Spinner and Crunch are, I think, 100% necessary. I think Sucker Punch is the more likely priority move for hitting literally everything but this and Slitherwing harder. And I'm thinking Sacred Sword, Protect, or Sword Stance will be competing in that last slot. Frankly, Sucker Punch is such better priority for him here, I'm feeling pretty confident that there is no Ice Shard. In that case, why not turn the tables on both that matchup and the Iron Moth matchup by outspeeding them both? We've got a few options. EQ is nice without Salamence or Electress or Hawlucha. Brick Break for screen shenanigans or just to take out the Chien-Pao straight up. And Stealth Rock can break sashes while getting some chip. But like with Toxtricity, I have my eye on one particular move. Outrage is very spammable. The resists are Florges, which isn't coming after what happened last time, Gardevoir, Lucario, and Magnezone. I don't think any of those are particularly likely. Additionally, I would love to see what would happen in a clean switch with Iron Moth, which may seem unlikely until Slowbro and Ting-Lu go down, but hear me out. I've gone in depth about the breakers of Slowbro, but my opponent will have a choice when, say, Toxtricity is in against Slowbro. Do I save the Slowbro by sacking something else, or do I sack the Slowbro so Toxtricity can't keep coming in and doing this on Slowbro? If he picks something else, no problem. I swap out Toxtricity on his revenge and do it again later. But what if he sacks the Slowbro? Something like Toxtricity becomes pretty lackluster after that, doesn't it? So he'd be left with these fast, frail threats, Scarf Garchomp seems perfectly positioned to take advantage of that. Outrage claiming the lives of Iron Moth and Salamence always, and Chien-Pao sometimes depending on investment. Otherwise, a Slowbro will be forced to slack off probably, or if it's carrying Ice Beam, try that, while Ting-Lu takes some punishment without KOing. If we avoid Sucker Punch priority after that chip, we're solid. I love this as a cleanup option, depending on what is sacked to Toxtricity, and if Slowbro is left late, I'll spam Outrage till I go down and force him to go Slowbro to pick yet another sack. I promise you, I win this trade. That's going to be really the big strat here. Toxtricity and Garchomp seem to go really well together in picking him apart. But we need one more versatile piece to bring things together here, and the first two choice items are looking a little bit lonely. I don't mind playing a bit riskier with Garchomp, or this, Lycanroc-Dusk, who do similar things to each other but with different options. They can both outspeed anything but one with Scarf and one with Accelerock. Outrage is more spammable, but Banded Close Combat is still a menace and only requires Slowbro down, with Stone Edge requiring Ting-Lu down. Do you know Banded Close Combat 2-hit KOs Iron Moth? Sheesh, it'll 2-hit KO Ting-Lu too, with Crunch actually picking up the 2-hit KO on Slowbro too. This is a bit of a prediction mon, and while Scarf Chomp intuitively seems like the cleanup mon of choice, Lycanroc-Dusk actually goes in a little harder once those one or two pieces are down. Garchomp and Toxtricity together can break super easily, not to mention what Gholdengo and Wo-Chien can do, but Lycanroc feels more like the finisher the team needs. Down to just Ting-Lu and Chien-Pao, Close Combat, Slowbro and Iron Moth, Crunch, Salamence and Chien-Pao, Accelerock. We've got the options to KO some big threats pending that little bit of chip or breaking the rest of the team that the rest of the team is able to and built to provide, even without reliable hazards. But really, the most spammable moves are Stone Edge pending Ting-Lu and Close Combat, with a possible Terra Fighting to boost that pending Slowbro. The only time I felt comfortable bringing Lycanroc in the regular season was this matchup, and while that is disappointing, I like it again here. I did think a couple of things about the item here. Life Orb last time with Swords Dance had a ton of potential, and I did think about swapping the band and Scarf with Garchomp to make this the Scarfer and put the band back on Garchomp, but I'm pretty satisfied with this. Completing our trio of choice-locked mons, hopefully that doesn't come back to bite us. Finally, I'll admit I really wasn't too sure about my set here. Azumarill's typing and stabs looked too darn good though to leave behind. I talked about the spamability of fairy moves earlier, but Slowbro was always looking like a threat no matter which set I slapped on here. In that case, how about breaking through the same way I did before, with Belly Drum? I don't even need Ice Spinner anymore as Serena is gone, so instead we picked Encore as a way to take advantage of something like Slowbro using Surf or Ting-Lu setting up hazards or something similar to get off the drum. As before, Aqua Jet at +6 KOs everything faster than me except for Salamence, so that plus Sucker Punch plus Rocky Helmet plus maybe hazards or whatever damage he can get onto me before setting up is all he gets to try and stop me. That said, I like the spamability of Player Off anyways, and if I want to force in Slowbro anyways, I have a couple ways to test for things like T-Wave. Toxtricity switch in anyone? I also like the idea of taking advantage of him trying to take advantage of my setup by just blasting away with Player Off until I think the path is safe to drum up. But if I need to use Azu defensively, swapping into Chien-Pao or Iron Moth, I think I can do that well too, as Citrus Berry will still give me 125% to play with if that's what we want to do with Azumarill. That said, with the team builder done, I don't think there will be all that much switching. We're looking at a lot of revenge KOs, both of us staying in often to prevent shenanigans from the others, and bold doubles out to catch things like that Slowbro. I think it should be a quick match in terms of turns, but and I know the replay doesn't capture this, I'm someone who takes his time thinking in between turns. We'll have to play smart to beat the back-to-back champ and end his reign. Can we do it again this season? Lucario is the 6th mon of choice. Can't say I even had a spec in my brain that thought about that. Well, it's often a mon that likes to spam extreme speed alongside close combat. We'll keep that in mind for Gholdengo and maybe Garchomp, yeah? Otherwise, for the lead, well, if there's a struggle with this team in particular, I think it's the lead. Every mon seems important for the others, breaking for each other in some capacity, but where do we start? If we're looking at his leads, I see Chien-Pao as a real possibility. That was his lead last time, and the way we thwarted that was with a mon that we didn't bring this time. Another one could be Ting-Lu, as I brought neither Avalugg nor Talonflame to remove its hazards. The mon I have that beats both is Azumarill, which also stands a bit by itself anyways, but if I lead with it, I do immediately risk not being able to belly drum. Surely it would be worth it to see what he has in store for me anyways. Sure, let's try for it. Let's go try it. Good luck, have fun to Michael in this match for the conference champion. It's Lucario. That's a bit odd. I sure didn't pick up on what it was trying to do here. Frankly, Lucario was so far off my radar that this move worked out exactly as Michael wanted it to, which is disappointing to me, but kudos to him. You see, I mentioned it in the team builder, right? Play Rough looks awfully spammable, with Iron Moth as the only resist here, and you know the follow-up Aqua Jet would force it out or into a Terra. Frankly, with Lucario in front of me and Belly Drum available, that should be an option. What is Lucario doing to me this turn? I was a bit concerned with something like Choice Band Extreme Speed, actually, which maybe I should have tried out. Maybe should have drawn that instead. I don't know. Instead, I'll just play turn 1 so we can talk about it here a little bit first, actually. Play Rough out first to bring him to Sash, and so that counter will Oko me back. 5-6. Yeah, I actually did think long and hard about Sash counter Lycanroc myself a couple weeks back, but this is kind of devastating. I had a few different options here, frankly. Belly Drum is pretty obvious to me now, too. Imagine if I could click Encore the next turn. Ooh, but didn't this seem kind of telegraphed? What else are you doing with lead Lucario? This seems kind of dumb by me in hindsight, but we have to live with it and move on. So I get to deal with this now. Great. What are my options? Toxtricity is outsped, so is Wo-Chien, so is Gholdengo, but I don't want to be locked in already against a 1 HP Mon with either Garchomp or Lycanroc, especially if Lycanroc would telegraph Accelerock in fear of Bullet Punch. So my option is going to be my other next most expendable member. I don't want to call Azu expendable after its regular season performance, but I guess the next one, or I really don't want to call this expendable either, but I guess Gholdengo, which I already mentioned I don't feel too good about in the matchup anyways. I'm not sure what he even has to hit me with, so I guess we can at least fire off a Shadow Ball. Crunch comes out, and I decided on that Shadow Ball for the KO 5-5 to try and bait in the Ting-Lu, so I could try and get that bit of chip, which I may need a little bit later. Instead, it's going to be the Chien-Pao. My switch in is Azu, which of course went down turn 1. There's probably more to say on what that lead was and how it was not the play, but hopefully I justified well enough why I did it, right? Anyways, I think from here we have about 3 options. The first is to simply stay in and click and attack. This Mon's item is probably either Scarf, Band, Boots, or Sash. If it's one of the latter, I don't want to risk him Sword Stancing up as I swap around, as we're starting to get into range of even Garchomp going down to Sucker Punch at +2. And if it's Sash, I won't even be able to Revenge easily. If Lucario was a designated lead with Sash, why not just put another one on the squad? The next option, though, would be to click Terra Fairy and attack. It would take away the Terra option from Wo-Chien specifically, though, as well as normal Boom Burst and fighting Lycanroc. But Crunch does seem pretty obvious, doesn't it? Couldn't I take advantage by clicking Make It Rain and doing at least 99.9% to it pending the Sash? I'd go down the next turn, obviously, but if it Sash and attacked me, I could Revenge with Lycanroc or Garchomp with relative ease, though even that gets a little bit risky. Finally, if Sash is possible and Crunch is likely, then my switch out play would be into Wo-Chien itself, the turn 4 Terra Rock Body Press KO. This play also loses to Sash, which looks to be just a pain for me right now, but otherwise could at least get my boy in early-ish while reducing him to 2 tanks and 2 offensive threats, forcing Iron Moth to be the one to beat me probably. However, I decided to just stay in and attack. I'm kind of hoping to prevent the absolute worst case scenario of him Sword Stancing up with the Focus Sash intact, as that itself would probably just be game with how much of my team would be broken. Gholdengo really doesn't have too much else to do in the matchup anyways. The one Mon that I'm down is one of the 3 that doesn't really break through Azumarill, so by trading one of the 3 that can't, or not Azumarill is one of the 3 that does not break through Slowbro. So by trading one of these that does break through, we'd kind of be at 2 and 2 there, similar to how he would be at remaining with 2 offensive and 2 defensive threats if we were to trade this out. Either way, I'm cool with risking this early. I mentioned I don't have too big of a plan for it, and I think I really need Wo-Chien's Terra Rock to come through to take down one of these Titans by surprise. And with the incredibly obvious Crunch incoming, Gholdengo goes down 4-5. I don't know if I even necessarily regret that play, honestly. I did think long and hard about using Terra Fairy there. It may have been nice to just take it down, and Wo-Chien may have tanked that hit easily and threatened back, but I'm prepared to see where this takes us. Instead, I've prepared another follow-up play that may look very similar to our first matchup, but we're going to try it anyways. I do go into Lycanroc here for the Revenge. I'm not 100% convinced on the existence of Sash or a choice item, but I want to find out. I will be immediately doubling out here into Wo-Chien, as if he's locked in, we tank it freely anyways and get his damage check. And if he isn't, we at least get to find out that I should have just attacked in the first place. But considering he didn't at least SD, maybe we were correct that it at least isn't Sash. In that case, we're just going to double out with Wo-Chien. We need to make a play of some kind here, and we're going to have to try to make some reads to do so. He does outspeed on the switch into Slowbro as we go Wo-Chien. Kind of perfect. Toxtricity may have looked better on that switch, but again, I like the safety of Wo-Chien against Crunch, which is the move that we've seen, and we cannot rule out the ability for Michael to just click one move over and over again with a choice item. That is very possible, plus the ability to threaten better if he stayed in to do nothing at all. Not to mention, we get to click Ruination this turn to even threaten the Ting-Lu, which Toxtricity would not have done nearly as well. This is the exact position I wanted Wo-Chien in. It's going to be even better because he's going to have to swap out of Slowbro, which I think he should with Garchomp and Lycanroc in the back. What's going to be taking half then? It's Iron Moth. Thanks for playing. You dodged it. I cannot believe how many times I've missed 90% accurate moves this season, particularly with the game or here in the playoffs, my season on the line. The only significant time I've hit a 90% accurate this move, from what I can remember, is probably Play Rough against the Birbs the first time we faced with a Zoom Roll Okoing Slowbro. Between Play Rough missing Baxcalibur, Play Rough missing Annihilate, and a Ruination missing Iron Moth. Well, let's see what we can make of this. I'd like to think I'm nothing if not resourceful. Last time we climbed out, so let's try it again. That is a full health Iron Moth I'm staring down now, and I have no ways to Oko right now as a result of that miss. I had thought about a couple other Terra options, Terra Ice for Salamence for one. Imagine if I'd had Terra Ground for Iron Moth right now, though. That'd be insane. Instead of it being in Terra Rock range, though, it's only poised to take half from either Ruination or Terra Rock. Fire and Poison are obviously threatening me right now, but do you remember last match? I had Lycanroc swap into threaten Iron Moth, but I read his Terra and doubled back into Slitherwing on the Terra Grass Energy Ball. Similarly, this match I also doubled out of Lycanroc. Are we following what we did last game, or are we going to look at what's happened this match? Michael has only made obvious plays. Counter with Sash turn 1, as much damage as he can before going down turn 2. Chien-Pao Crunch turn 3. Swap out of a possible Scarf Close Combat turn 4, or just the Accelerock. Swap out of the Grass move, potentially incoming turn 5. He's a whole mon ahead and just saved another 50% from a miss. I don't think he needs to be over-predicting right now. I'm going to do it. I'm going to click Terra Rock, and I'm going to see what we can do. Worst case scenario, he's predicting Lycanroc to come in. A Terra Grass to Energy Ball and reduces my damage and accidentally hitting super effectively. Best case scenario, I tank the hit and bring him below half. The reward doesn't seem too high, but I think we need to do literally anything to get us into this game. Terra Rock, Overheat, does a third, and Terra Blast will, of course, do more than half. Perfect, I think. Even better, though that Overheat did do a lot, that tells us that this is, in fact, a Choice Specs Iron Moth, meaning it's locked into -1 Overheat against a Rock type that just did over half to it. No shot he stays in, and that means we can at least take advantage of this with another Ruination on the obvious switch out. Maybe we can even hit this time, and maybe a best case scenario again. It's going to be Ting-Lu coming in and goes down to 50%, and it will not even be showing leftovers either, which is awesome. That does probably mean that this is, as I said earlier, AV or Choice Band. Let's take a moment to celebrate Wo-Chien so far. It looks like we've already made our way out of the hole created by missing that first Ruination, so good stuff for sure. Okay, so if I had to guess, Earthquake is coming our way. We don't exactly have ground resist this week with Talonflame and Slitherwing on the bench and Wo-Chien reversing the positive matchup we had, and considering there were no lefties, I suspect I'm correct again about the item being either AV or Choice Band. It could even be Helmet though, that would kind of suck. If it's Choice Band, I think EQ has a shot to KO. Actually, with how much bulk we have, maybe not. My guess is he's going to try and find out what move we have to hit him with this turn. Giga Drain may have been nice this turn to heal up, but in case it's AV, I am still glad that we have the reliable Body Press. We're going to try it. It does about 30%, a little bit more, as we take about 52% back. That is no Choice Band, no Helmet either. I'm pretty positive then at this point that that's an Assault Vest. I knew it, and it's probably not even max HP actually, considering how much we did. Probably some speed investment for Azumarill, funnily enough. I didn't touch on it in Team Builder, but I put a pretty random amount of speed on Ozu this week, just in case Electros or Ting-Lu wanted to try speed creeping. Looks like that would have been appropriate had it lasted longer than one turn. Anyways, I'm going to be relatively okay after this next turn, I think, but what is the play here? More importantly, what is my opponent doing? Body Press KOs next turn easily, but will Michael want to save this as a sack? Iron Moth or Slowbro look like reasonable switches here, each resisting fighting and threatening me back pretty heavily, and maybe forcing me into a trade war that I can no longer win. On the other hand, Ting-Lu is threatening me right now as well, and if I go down to the next EQ, I'm also in danger. Sure, let's just try and get the KO right now, and of course, we will be rewarded with the KO 4-4, as the revenge answer, relatively obviously, will be Iron Moth. We're so close to fully turning this around, actually. Ting-Lu being down means that Garchomp opens up a bit more, and Boomburst should be claiming KO every time Toxtricity comes in. And if Slowbro goes down, Accelerock may just clean up the rest of the game entirely. Wo-Chien, though, is running out of use, but I think I can get a KO here. Fire moves are pretty useless by this point. We need to point this out first, the full cycle of Iron Moth's moves. I have 3 resists remaining to the fire moves, and the fire move he's shown would harshly lower his special attack, not to mention the coverage he needs on this mon. What coverage? He needs grass, he needs fairy, and he needs poison. You know what actually resists all 3? It's Toxtricity. And just like that, Michael, I'm going to need you to pick a sack. Well, I did switch in pretty easily there, but let's see, also, we're looking around at some of the possibilities of what he could switch in. A Sash is still possible on Chien-Pao, but otherwise, something is going down before I do. I love it when a plan comes to fruition. In this case, what will be incoming will, in fact, be that Chien-Pao. So we're going to see the Chien-Pao come in. Wait, wasn't there a Chien-Pao there just now? Apparently not. 4-3 Bouffalant with that big threat gone, though. I did have a couple ways to deal with it, I guess. And now for Salamence to make its appearance. We've got Intimidate. I'm assuming, again, that this should be a defensive set for that Slitherwing that devastated you last time here. Boomburst does KO, of course, but obviously, if it's the physical set, I'm not sure if it's physical or special, EQ will KO me here. My ways to beat Slowbro are actually growing a little bit thinner here, too, though Crunch actually is starting to look very spammable right now on Lycanroc. That looks like the spammable move for me right now. So maybe if I can get a little bit of chip off on, probably this would be best. Maybe it's worth it to save this. I could also throw in the Wo-Chien. What about Dragon Dance? I have a Scarf Chomp in the back, actually. I don't mind that too much, so long as it's kept to 1 Dragon Dance. So the real issue, I think, yeah, it's Terra. Yeah, we haven't seen him Terra yet, and although he's been favoring the Slowbro, that Terra coming out offensively on Salamence could be a bit of a problem. Imagine he goes Fairy as I click Outrage to try and revenge him, or imagine he doesn't Terra as I Earthquake. Oh no. How do we deal with that? I think I'm going to have to trust my gut here. I'm figuring, again, he'll be Roost with maybe 3 special attacks or Roost with 3 physical attacks, depending on if he wants EQ or Flamethrower to go with his stabs. It coming in here very much makes it look like it's Earthquake. If it's special Salamence, he's going to need a Draco Meteor. Actually, probably some flawed thinking from me here, as if it's special Salamence, I think I have the game about wrapped up here anyways, but if it's physical, we are in trouble. Even more so if it's Dragon Dance. My brain couldn't put 2 pieces together, though. That setup and Terra was a losing formula, because in this case, I decided to go into Wo-Chien to save Toxtricity, and he decides to D-Dance as the Terra's Steel. Uh-oh. Did I just throw? A second D-Dance wins him the game right here, and I didn't bring him to half like Boomburst would have to stop him from dancing. I can body press, but please hit me? Okay, EQ is out. We stopped him at 1 D-Dance accidentally. The counter throw from my throw. 3-3, Garchomp is in, and I'm Scarfed. And now you've arrived at my point of view at this moment. However, dear viewer, I do implore you to go back to the Team Builder at this time. I didn't really touch on EVs this Team Builder, probably for a pretty good reason. Frankly, I did spend a lot of time team building, but not really around EVs. If there was a weakness in my team building all season, it was probably that. In fact, you may recall just last week, when I didn't invest enough speed and Toxtricity to outspeed the Calc default Annihilate. and that Wo-Chien had a relaxed nature instead of impish when there was no reason to do so. What about this time? Azu had a bit of random speed on there, a lot of 252, 252 sets, and Garchomp, well, when EVing speed, I have several different options. A 252 Jolly Scarf would allow me to outspeed +1 Jolly Salamence. 252 Adamant Scarf would allow me to outspeed +1 Adamant Salamence. And 124 Adamant would allow me to outspeed Jolly Chien-Pao. I went into this engagement assuming I'd put enough speed on Garchomp for +1 Salamence. But, I sure didn't. I went Adamant, so we could actually do damage to Slowbro and Ting-Lu. Ting-Lu in particular becomes a 3-hit KO with Outrage, and Slowbro could be 3-hit KO'd even with lefties. But maybe I didn't need to. Probably more importantly, I put 116 EVs into HP instead of speed. This amount didn't stop a 2-hit KO from Dazzling Gleam Iron Moth, or totally stop a 3-hit KO from Ting-Lu's Earthquake, or prevent a 2-hit KO from Adamant Chien-Pao's Crunch, or anything specific like that. It was just extra bulk, just in case. But what about prepping for D-Dance Salamence? I thought Roost was more likely, but, just in case. I think I got 4 of Michael's Mons correct. It was Boots Chien-Pao, Specs Iron Moth, AV Ting-Lu, and Kasib Berry Slowbro. But the 2 that I didn't, the Sash Counter Lucario and D-Dance Salamence, cost me the match. And my run at the Season 12 Championship. We'll see it play out here, but GG to Michael. Only one possible hacks play there, but frankly I think I ended up pulling that back to even. I could have KO'd Iron Moth if Ruination had hit, but then Ting-Lu would not have had to take the Ruination, and I'd rather have had Iron Moth up in the endgame than Ting-Lu. Instead, the 2 costly decisions here were in team building, to putting EVs in bulk, just because, rather than speed for +1 Adamant Salamence, and right before the game started, choosing my lead matchup. In hindsight, neither are particularly egregious. I outlined why I thought Salamence would need to be the Slitherwing check this time, as well as why I selected Azumarill as my lead. But maybe both of these decisions were me getting into my own head. I was correct about the Ting-Lu being better prepared for Trick, and I was correct about a couple of plays concerning the Iron Moth. But I was not correct about something quite interesting. Michael did not put extra fail-safes for Belly Drum Azumarill, nor for Choice Scarf Slithering, despite those being the other two factors alongside the Trick Goldango that won me the match the first time. Was it wrong of me to think that those same 2 Mons wouldn't dominate again? It led me to both leading with Azumarill aggressively and not even bringing Slithering. Was it silly to anticipate that the Salamence would be the dedicated Slithering answer, and not let it and or its teammates be worn down so freely like his team suggests? Indeed, without Serena around either game and the focus sash being on the dedicated lead, was his team not just as weak to the same exact Azumarill that got 5 KOs the first time we faced off? I'm still confused about this, but I think the Azumarill thing is also my fault for leading it. If it really looked like it could sweep that easily, I should have just swept with it, In that case, what would have been the best lead? In my mind, it looks like the other best choice for Ting-Lu Chien-Pao, the 2 leads I anticipated from him, would have been Garchomp, actually, for being able to outspeed Chien-Pao and at least 3-hit KO Ting-Lu, without being 3-hit KO'd in return, probably. And indeed, if in this Magic La La Land I had led Garchomp, we may in fact find ourselves in the exact same situation, only with Azumarill in the back instead of Garchomp at the end. In such a circumstance, we probably don't play the exact same way, but some things I think remain true. I still Terra Wo-Chien, Chien-Pao is even more likely to be a sack to Boom Burst, and when we get to the fateful turn, then what? Salamence dropped its Fairy Weakness for a reason, but also dropped its Water Resist. To me, it looks very possible that Azumarill would have been able to tank a +1 hit from full, and with the help of the Citrus Berry, KO back with Aqua Jet. Indeed, that would have been game. Aqua Jet the Iron Moth, and like the first time, Player Off the Slowbro. Even if Player Off had missed the Slowbro, Toxtricity and Banded Crunch Accelerock looked like they would have cleaned up. So, as I said, I think the game came down to a poor lead matchup and an ability to recognize the lead Lucario set, in addition to the greed of trying to throw some HP EVs just because. That said, of course, as always, GG again to Michael. Well played as usual. My match's MVP has got to be Wo-Chien for coming through against the Iron Moth and Ting-Lu after the miss. But with that, the season is over, and I think it's time for one last recap of this very special team. I say this was a special team because I truly do think There was a stretch during this season that I played probably better than I ever have. From after the bye through, I suppose, the last couple turns of the quarterfinal match, I think I was playing so well. And even in this loss, I don't think I played poorly necessarily. A different team may have necessitated a different play that I may not have jived with, so big shout out to the whole squad here. That said, a couple disappointments to wrap up the season. Cyclezar and Dockspun dropped early. I did see a couple opportunities for them a little later in the season potentially, but I'm not too torn up about not using them this time. That said, Arcanine and Avalugg were actually a little lackluster as well. The pickups weren't really the spark plug I wanted them to be, even if they kicked off a ridiculous streak of dominance from me. Arcanine, without those couple moves it had access to last gen alongside a high-powered format, let me down a bit, which isn't a bad thing because the couple times it came it gave me confidence. I just don't think it had as great a role overall in the team this time compared to last. Avalugg was often close to coming, but only endured a single hit for the team. I loved the body press and rapid spin ideas, but the typing and stuff, alongside an attack stat that I couldn't necessarily afford to invest in, plus a desire to Terra, were its undoing. When I decided I needed a more dedicated wall for my squad, I picked up Avalugg, but found I already had it elsewhere. And in any case, we all learned this season that there are very few competent spinners and defoggers worth using in Scarlet Violet pre-home and pre-DLC, so I really don't feel too bad about that. Rounding out the underachievers, though, man, I am pretty disappointed that I couldn't use Lycanroc-Dusk better. I do genuinely think this was just another casualty of the higher-powered format. Maybe when we established tiers, it could be better or easier to use, but I often found it difficult to find a time to use Accelerock in a matchup, let alone having it do enough damage to justify bringing them on. In the end, I didn't even click a meaningful move with it all season. Similar to Avalugg, I also found a fragile attacker I liked using much more anyways, one that didn't have an 80% accurate Stone Edge and a non-stab close combat that was stronger than that Stone Edge as its main attacking options. I had plenty of priority anyways, and the Rock Stab wasn't really helping, so aside from the speed tier, I'm not sure I can reasonably say Lycanroc was worth the selection this time. However, in the Met Expectations category, I've got Gastrodon. It was fine. It tanked us a Titan hit, +6 to Titan hit, and struck back pretty well, at least. It traded out with Skeledirge week 1, I suppose. It baited out the Specs Glamora, I guess, but man, there were so many times where I was missing one move on the learn set. Toxic. How do I damage the mons I'm supposed to tank? Dondozo, Rotom Wash, Palafin. It retained access to Sludge Bomb for some reason. Why not let it keep Toxic? I have traded at least one of its hazards for that, but even with hazards looking as good as they did this season, with removers as bad as they are, I couldn't make it work as well as I'd have liked. Decidedly fine. We may give Gastro another go-around depending on its future treatment. The only other mon I have in this Met Expectations tier may be odd, but I'm selecting Garchomp here. My second round pick, Garchomp set up hazards decently well, broke through multiple mons decently well, tanked hits decently well, but never had a go-off game like I expected it to have, considering its draft position. The typing was incredibly helpful, but I found a couple matchups I didn't even want to bring it to. The offensive power is nice, but a couple of times I felt I needed a band or setup to do anything meaningful. The defense is nice, but a couple times there was concern about out-trading what I needed to, and I was unable to Terra it out of its quadruple ice weakness or a terrifying fairy weakness. Maybe I'm still stuck in my old Gen 4 days when Garchomp was the menace, but it seemed pretty balanced this time around for the position I picked it up. Nothing crazy, nothing too special, just didn't go off. And heck, maybe if I'd EV'd it correctly it would have shined, yeah? But instead, everything else on my team I think exceeded my expectations. Talonflame, while losing my favor in the playoffs, was brought to 6 of 7 regular season matches, and I enjoyed having it there the whole time. A reliable defogger with priority Gale Wings, thanks to Boots, and threatening Taunt, Willow, Bravebird, definitely shined early in the season. Bravebirding Volcarona for almost all its health, pivoting around Ting-Lu and removing all its hazards. Really decent mon. For its base stat total and fall from Gen 6 heights, it seems like it gets a worse rap than it deserves. I enjoyed Talonflame. Definitely will keep my eye on it for that 126 speed tier and reliability, especially in the hazard removal department, which is kind of tough to come by. Next is Slitherwing. It took me a bit to find its sporadic footing, but it really shined in a couple key matchups in the season. That Scarf Slitherwing against the Birbs week 3 was maybe the biggest key to my success in that matchup. The Terra Steel into close combat on the Iron Jugulus was maybe the coolest play I made all season. And the priority and power of first impression proved its namesake against Matt in the playoffs. It only had a couple opportunities, but I'd like to think we made the most of them. Good stuff to Scuttlebutt. In a similar vein, Wo-Chien was used somewhat sporadically, but I finally felt like I could rely on it by the end of our time together. What an absolute unit and tank. I think I unfairly placed some blame on it week 1 when I Terra'd Fairy, and it took me a bit to get out of the idea that Wo-Chien was underwhelming in any sense. It dominated against Matt in the regular season, but then struggled to find its place again until playoffs. It did well against Matt again. An audible forced it into action early against Annihilate, but it both got it into range of Gholdengo and swapped around to give it the T-Spikes a safety net, and then did very well in this match. My most reliable playoffs mon was Wo-Chien? Quite possibly. My eyes have been open to both the walling prowess and offensive potential of the snail. Wo-Chien is welcome back anytime, despite maybe needing an over-reliance on Terra. I'm a bit shocked to say this. I think my number 3 mon overall was Toxtricity. I made a claim early about how underappreciated Toxtricity is, but wow did it do well. Early it was a reliable Scarf weeks 1 and 2, and then it fell out of favor a little bit. But then I started looking at some impressive calcs. After doing some bit work against the Mudkips, it was the bright star of the show against the Lairon with the sweep, and then was the backbone of my playoff strategy both weeks, laying down T-Spikes against the Incineroar and forcing the Birbs to pick a sack against Slowbro. It would have been instrumental, get it, in the endgame too if I had EV'd correctly on Garchomp, so Toxtricity really ended up shining. With double-digit KOs to what is a relatively understated electric type in our league, I'd say this was a smashing success. Finally though, the top 2. Azumarill was so good this season with an amazing typing offensively and defensively. What is it with me and offensive water types lately? Is this a thing now? Still, I got to run so many fun sets with it. Belly drum, sub-belly drum, band. Okay, maybe there wasn't that much diversity, but boy is it a good feeling to land hits with huge power backing you up. From a belly drum sweep week 3 to banded liquidation against the Incineroar, it's hard to say any mon had highs as high as Azumarill across the whole conference. Nor quite the lows. The 2 costly player off misses were heartbreakers, plus being hard countered in this last match means its run to the top of the KO leaderboard was stopped short before it could reach glory. This mon is so good, but I would sacrifice 10 power off a player off for 10 accuracy in a heartbeat, even if it would mean that Slowbro isn't KO code by at plus 6 anymore. Still a great mon, still would draft again, but maybe we'll run wide lens more often next time, yeah? But seriously, it takes a lot for my first round pick to be worth it, but being the leader on a team that went on after week 1 a 6-0 run in which we lost a total of 5 mons, Gholdengo invalidated so many more mons than I would have anticipated, which is relatively unique itself, but adding in the sheer power of Make It Rain, plus the spam ability of Shadow Ball, plus the few unique options it has to access to, it's a small move pool, but wow does it pack a punch. Sub T-Wave Hex week 2, to Trick Scarf week 3, to Covert Cloak week 4, to Sub Nasty Plot week 6. I didn't even get to try out screens. Gholdengo often came in and forced my opponents into the worst situations. It does make me glad I picked it and built a supporting cast around this particular mon. An easy MVP for the season for me, finishing with the most KOs in Johto conference play, though of course Salaman's right there as well. That will wrap things up for another season of Wooper Club League content. Thank you to everybody who made it this far, and thank you for watching all the way through another fun ride in another crazy draft league. First place in the regular season, along with an extremely fun playoff win, that's probably the minimum expectation for us at this point. Overall, a success, I would say. I think having such open tarot was probably a mistake, but it was definitely worth to try it at least once, though admittedly, it was much more balanced than I'd expected. Definitely excited to have another crack at balancing Terra in the next season. We've got a ton of cool ideas floating out there for the next season, so please stick around to find out what else we've got happening on the channel, both this and the main league channel, which is also in the description. Until then, I've been Illogic, coach of your Buffalo Bouffalant, and I'll see you next time.